We're happy to have you here.
Right, Amy? Yes.
Proceed.
I'm up first. Right.
Great.
Good morning, Chairwoman Paulin. Good morning, Chairman Simringer. Good morning, Assembly Member Barron. Again, my name is Matthew Ketchke. I am the Vice President for Distributed Resource Integration for Con Edison. It's very nice to be here this morning, and I thank you for the opportunity to discuss CHP and standby rates. I'm also responsible for distributed resource integration, including the BQDM project falls under my area. So if we have questions on that as well. To begin my testimony today, I would like to briefly explain standby rate system as it works today, as it's functioning today. The Chairwoman described some of the changes that are in motion, but these are how the rates work today. After which, I'd be happy to explain any questions you have. Standby rates are paid by customers generally with combined heat and power, or CHP generators, that are interconnected to the utility distribution system. While standby customers do not obtain all of their energy from the utility's delivery system, they still rely on the utility delivery system to deliver, one, customers' needs in excess of their output of their generator, so supply in excess of their generator output, and two, backup service during planned or unplanned outage of the generator, and three, for larger units, sale of excess energy that's produced. Standby rates recover the cost for the utility to install and maintain infrastructure in the street necessary to meet the customer's entire electric load. In other words, when the customer's generator is not operating, the utility can be counted on to meet the customer's entire electric needs. The rates include a combination of contract and as-used demand charges that recognize that the customer relies on the utility through a total connected electrical load, not simply the energy consumed. The rates are designed so that standby customers pay for the cost of the local facilities or those facilities closest to the customer that service the customer directly, and those facilities upstream through a contract demand charge that's assessed on the customer. Standby customers also pay an as-used daily demand charge for costs of upstream utility infrastructure for the standby customer and other customers, so shared facilities that are upstream, not just dedicated to the customer. When standby customers do not pay their share of utility costs through these two rate mechanisms for the infrastructure that serves them, the cost for that infrastructure, which is required to serve the customer, is shifted to other utility customers. The current standby rate design is based on guidelines established by the New York State Public Service Commission in 2001, which reflect the diversity of loads of the different standby customers. Since then, there have been a number of standby rate developments. For example, Con Edison offers an offset standby rate that permits customers to interconnect generators directly into Con Edison's high-tension system and offset the generated output for the electricity used to other customers within the same building. This type of interconnection provides considerable infrastructure savings for customers as it allows the customers to wheel power through Con Ed's high-tension system to low-tension customers at the same address. Most recently, Con Edison offers standby customers the opportunity to earn credits against their contract demand charges, allowing them to lower their contract demand charges by demonstrating reliable generator performance during peak summer months. It is important to note the difference between rates customers pay for electricity on one hand and the compensation that might be paid for their value as distributed resources, CHP being a type of distributed resource that provides value to the system, and that they can be different. As an example, when a generating facility can be counted on to operate an area where we have a system deficiency or shortfall, and infrastructure can be deferred, we want to compensate that generator for the contribution it makes to the system. As Commissioner Zimmerman, Chairwoman Zimmerman discussed, that's part of what we're looking at REV and part of what we're doing in BQDM, where we are looking to incentivize customers to bring their resources to bear to allow for the deferral of a substation construction project. Cost-based and equitable rates are long-standing principles of rate design, including standby rates. Standby rates work so that customers with private generation pay their share of the cost to provide them with the necessary electric service and infrastructure, and so these costs are not shifted to other customers. Thank you, and once again, thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I'll take any questions you have, or if we want to go through and do questions at the end.
Maybe we'll hear from the rest of the panel, and then we can ask questions.
Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to provide testimony on residential and business net metering issues. As noted in the introductions, I'm Ray Kinney. I'm the Director of Transmission Services at New York State Electric and Gas, NYSEG, and Rochester Gas and Electric, RG&E, both of which are subsidiaries of Avangrid and our global parent, Iberdrola SA. To help you understand the size and scope of our service territories, I wanted to point out that NYSEG serves 883,000 electricity and 264,000 natural gas customers across 20,000 square miles of upstate New York. Rochester Gas and Electric serves 371,000 electricity customers and 307,000 natural gas customers across 2,700 miles of 9 counties, including the Rochester metropolitan area. NYSEG, RG&E, and Avangrid, and our global parent, Iberdrola, are avid supporters of renewable energy. In fact, Iberdrola is the world's largest wind developer. Both NYSEG and RG&E work closely with private sector renewable companies and individuals throughout our service territory to help incorporate green technologies into the state's energy mix. In fact, to date, NYSEG and RG&E have helped to bring over 5,800 customer-owned net generating facilities online with a total generating capacity of approximately 88 megawatts. It's important to recognize that interconnection requirements for net metered facilities in New York are governed by the New York State Public Service Commission's Standard Interconnection Requirements, or SIRS. NYSEG and RG&E strive to maintain compliance with these regulations. However, like many of other regulated utilities, in recent years we have seen exponential growth in the number of interconnection applications received. While that shows positive growth in renewable generation, it has also taxed the interconnection process. Some of the resulting challenges for us include the fact that incomplete applications are often received, and that stalls our review of projects and moving them through the process. Sudden increases in project application volumes associated with state programs such as the NYSERDA ponds, combined with the increasing volume of applications with a large variability in monthly application volume, present resource challenges. For example, in 2016, monthly application volume for 2 megawatt class projects in our service territory have ranged from a low of 33 applications to a high of 180 applications. And then I think we must recognize that distribution systems were originally designed to deliver energy to customers, not deliver generation to the transmission system. Think of it as designing one-way streets, if you will. In order to address these challenges and assist in expediting the project review process, NYSEG and RG&E have added personnel to support this function. In 2015, our interconnection group added 2 permanent staff members, and we are in the process of adding 2 more team members in 2016. Our distribution planning group is also adding staff in 2016 to aid in interconnection project technical analysis. We will continue to monitor and evaluate manpower requirements based on our current and projected interconnection application volume and our commitment to meet regulatory requirements. NYSEG and RG&E have also made significant enhancements to our interconnection database in order to improve both the tracking and processing of interconnection projects. Project tracking is generated on a daily basis and is shared with our senior team. Senior management's focus on full compliance with all regulatory deadlines indicates our sincere commitment to bring more interconnection agreements in place in a timely fashion. We have also enhanced our interconnection portal that's been online since December of 2015. This portal allows for internet-based interconnection application submissions and tracking, again to improve efficiencies and outcomes. Our distribution planning has also enhanced the technical tools that are used to review projects. These new tools have led to accommodation of larger project interconnections and lower interconnection costs. NYSEG and RG&E believe that communications and outreach is key to expediting project review and ultimately interconnection agreements. We have made a renewed effort for outreach to developers to improve communication, review our interconnection project queue, and most importantly, provide outcomes that are acceptable to everyone. Finally, in order to bring consistency and clarity to standardized interconnection requirements in the application process, the New York State Public Service Commission has revised their standard interconnection requirements as of March 2016. NYSEG and RG&E support this new framework and will work within it to ensure that desired outcomes are realized. Thank you for this opportunity to meet with you this morning.
Good morning, Chair Pollan, Chair Schimminger, and Chair Barron. I am John Gavin. I am the Vice President of Electric Systems Engineering at National Grid, and I am here to represent our company. With $1 billion in annual capital spending in New York and on track to invest close to $3 billion in our electricity network over the next 5 years, National Grid, as you know, is a retail natural gas service provider in New York City, Long Island, and upstate New York, a retail electricity service provider in upstate New York, and owner and operator of electricity generation on Long Island. I appreciate the opportunity to update the Assembly on our initiatives supporting distributed generation and our role in helping to achieve a decarbonized energy network. National Grid's 8,000 New York-based employees live, work, and raise our families alongside the 4 million customers we serve. That shared sense of community has taught us that our customers are savvy, forward-thinking, and deeply mindful of our environment. That makes our role as a major energy provider straightforward. We need to ensure that our energy becomes cleaner, more efficient, resilient, and reliable, all while offering customers more choices and more control. Our goals align nicely with the REV process and with the leadership role New York is playing in the energy industry's transformation. On Earth Day, just a few weeks ago, National Grid was honored to be a guest at the United Nations as world leaders from 175 countries signed the Paris Climate Accord. Like the signatories, we are committed to reducing carbon emissions. We fully support New York's target of 50% renewables by 2030 and the U.S. goal of 80% renewable by 2050. We also fully support customer-owned renewable generation. It's good for our environment, it's good for our communities, and importantly, solar and other distributed energy resources are essential to achieving these very aggressive and important clean energy goals. Recognizing the critical role solar will continue to play in New York, National Grid, along with other state utilities and 3 of the nation's leading solar developers, form the innovative Solar Progress Partnership. The partnership is designed to encourage more renewable energy across the state while ensuring a reasonable cost for customers and the safety and reliability of the electricity grid. We're also working on a REV demonstration project in Buffalo that will help determine the best ways to increase solar and energy efficiency adoption in low to moderate income neighborhoods. These types of initiatives will help us modernize the grid and integrate renewable energy into our system. National Grid's U.S. business is among the top 10 utilities in the country when it comes to installing solar. In upstate New York, we have distributed generation projects both installed and proposed that include solar, wind, combined heat and power, hydro, and biomass. It's clear that solar energy is growing rapidly across upstate New York, thanks in large part to federal and state incentives and utility support. Solar represents 88% of all interconnected systems and about 93% of all proposed systems. That's great news, but it also presents a challenge. National Grid has received more than 10,000 solar applications over the last 2 years. That's a 500% increase from 2013. We know we're not alone and that New York's other utilities also are experiencing significant increases. Yet partly due to the vast size of National Grid service territory, our volume is 2 to 50 times higher than our fellow utilities, representing nearly half of all interconnection requests in our state. Over the last 5 years, we connected more than 10,000 renewable projects totaling 200 megawatts upstate. That's enough electricity to light 35,000 homes. In fact, we connected more renewable projects in 2015 than in the previous 12 years combined, and a full 100% more in 2015 than in 2014. Each application is reviewed to ensure continued safety, reliability, and power quality for all customers, both those interested in connecting solar and the 1.6 million upstate residential and business customers who count on us with their daily energy needs. There are 2 types of solar applications, simple and complex. Simple solar projects represent more than 92% of the applications we receive and are typically residential rooftop or ground solar panels. They average 6 kW, 6 kilowatts in size, enough electricity to meet the energy requirements and needs of a large residential home, and they are reviewed and provided conditional approval within 10 days. Our challenge lies with the larger, more complex solar applications that have been submitted in abnormally high volumes due to pending policy changes regarding net metering credits. Complex solar projects, typically hosted by schools, municipalities, hospitals, and colleges, average 1,375 kilowatts. While complex projects represent fewer than 8% of applications we received, they must undergo a more comprehensive engineering analysis than smaller projects. The detailed review is required to identify the nature of any electricity system modifications needed to ensure the customer's proposed system can be connected to our infrastructure without impacting safety, reliability, and power quality. Since May of 2015, National Grid experienced 2 surges of complex applications totaling more than 1,000 megawatts. Those surges represented a more than 700% increase compared to the previous 12-month average. Again, that's great news. However, the unanticipated volume outpaced our ability to complete engineering reviews within prescribed timeframes. We have a robust plan in place to tackle the backlog and move these projects forward. The plan includes increasing engineering support by nearly 300%, streamlining processes without compromising safety and reliability, developing a new online application portal to provide customers with greater visibility into their proposal status, ongoing meetings with developers, customers, and other key stakeholders to improve education and transparency, providing a single point of contact for large developers to better understand their priorities and help them manage their portfolios, and anticipating and preparing for increased complex solar construction projects and associated net metering, which are the next steps after engineering reviews are completed and customers decide to move forward with their proposals. Implementing these actions better position us to process future complex applications within required timeframes. As one of the largest utilities in New York and the country, National Grid is committed to taking a leadership role to ensure the success of distributed generation. In 2015 alone, we connected close to 5,000 customer-owned solar projects to our upstate electricity network. While that's more than any other utility in the state, we plan to do even better. We welcome the opportunity to work with the Assembly, our regulators, utilities, and other stakeholders to continue to develop strategies that enable New York to achieve its renewable energy goals. Thank you for this opportunity to address the committees, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Gavin, in your written testimony, you were kind enough to mention that National Grid has distributed generation projects installed and proposed in upstate New York, which includes solar, wind, hydro, biomass, and CHP, combined heat and power. And it was mentioned earlier that CHP is mainly downstate. Can you identify for us specifically or generally where this CHP project is?
No.
Okay, okay. Love to hear if it's in Buffalo.
No, but I will find out.
Okay, great. Thank you. Others?
Yeah. I'm going to ask a few questions on interconnection and then on standby. So first, we heard earlier that there's a queue of about 9,000 projects, and I recognize that you're all a little different, in size and number of customers, but I wondered, if you had any idea of the queue in your individual territories for interconnection.
You guys want to go? Or so for Con Ed, the bulk of the interconnection issues that have built up the queues across the state have really been driven by community net metering projects. I think that's been consistent across the state. Those projects typically fit better for the developers in areas where land is more available. So the bulk of those applications have been in areas where land is more available or outside of Con Ed service territory. So we currently have a fairly small interconnection queue, both for photovoltaic and for CHP, and really those jobs are work in progress right now. So we currently don't have, we're probably the only utility in the state that doesn't have a large interconnection backlog. We have a working backlog right now, but not essentially a backlog based on a large number of community solar jobs that came in.
So it's mostly you guys, I guess, right?
Well, as far as the larger projects, and these are like 2 megawatt class or megawatt and above. Right now, I'd say we have approximately 700 of those projects in the queue. We also get a lot of, the homeowner, the small business, the things that are 50 kW and above. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you, how many of those we currently have in the queue. I can tell you that, the smaller projects, 50 kW and less, on average right now, we turn those applications around in about 2 business days.
Right. And for National Grid, from a complex project that we have in the queue, we're in around the 800 range presently.
In the 800. But for small ones, those are turned around, and what's the length of time for those?
10 days.
10 days.
Right.
10 days.
Could I ask what, in the, for example, NYSEG was very specific in giving a number as to how many interconnections you have in your region presently, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm the newbie in this field. What proportion of those are interconnections that go to residences? How does it break out in terms of who you're interconnecting with?
I couldn't probably, off the top of my head, I couldn't give you the specifics.
Circa,
the
roughly.
vast majority right now are the homeowner style interconnections. We have a lot of those. They have come in and grown, tremendously over the years. As I know,
We'll be making a lot of panels out in Buffalo soon. So.
we have plenty of people interested in putting them in. We have grown. A few years back, we might have been putting in 400 or 500 projects a year, or receiving that number of applications. Mm-hmm. Last year, we received something on the order of 2,800, 2,600 of those representing the small homeowner class installations.
Yeah. So predominantly residential. Those that are not residential are what? Are
large solar farm style interconnections. We've received, I think I said we have, approximately, off the top of my head, about 700 in the queue right now. The vast majority of those are a 2 megawatt class facility. Obviously, I think I mentioned we have like 20,000 square miles of service territory in upstate New York, a lot of it rural. A lot of the developers approaching, I think, the large landowner, the farmer community, to seek land to put in these larger facilities for remote net metering, community distributed generation, and the like.
Which we're only going to see increase because of the new projects
Absolutely.
Involved with community. Right. So the new order that came out in March, the PSC indicated that it was done collaboratively, and I just wondered your individual impressions about your ability to comply, with those, because the intent is to expedite, and I just didn't clearly without additional staff that's going to be hard to do. So I didn't know if what the plan was to staff up in order to accommodate the new order.
At National Grid, what we're doing, we've staffed up for this surge, that we saw. We didn't, in hindsight, based on our historical experience, in some of our other jurisdictions, we did not anticipate, a spike this large. So we did start to staff up, accordingly, back about, back in the March timeframe. But we did holistically, rather than going after, small, staffing numbers, incrementally, we did look at the whole process, at the beginning of the summer, last summer, and we finished that evaluation up last November. So upstate, we got approval to add 8 additional bodies. We're also using contractors. So we have 4 contract firms. We're bringing 2 more on board to help us meet the demand. But the other thing that we're doing is we don't think that just throwing people at this is the answer. We're looking at different technologies that are out there, and we're also looking at, ways that we can streamline our process and do things, rather than a serial nature, more of a parallel nature. So by reevaluating our processes, and also, looking at different technologies that are out there, we think that we'll be able to meet that challenge that the PSC has put forward with the new SIR. And and with the queuing, and the 90 days for the developers, to get back to us, that's certainly going to help us, with managing, what we've got, in the queue, and what projects are real and which ones aren't.
So, one of the things that we had heard, which led up to the hearing from some of the solar developers in particular, was that they don't know, and I'm assuming it's not for the small projects, it's for the, municipal and hospital and, that level, right? So that they're unsure of what to provide the utility, and it seems to, they give something and then 3 days later they're asked for something different, or, that there's lack of clarity on what actually the materials that are needed. And I just wondered, sometimes that frustration is on the other end too. Like you're asking the question, why don't they just give me what I need? So, is there an effort to make that clearer so that your job is easier and at the same time there's less frustration among the developers themselves? I guess I'm particularly looking at, where I know we're only going to see solar grow. I think in Con Edison, catchment area, it's going to be harder to see these solar farms pop up, just because of the less land available. But, where you are, we're just going to see more of these complex projects, and I just didn't, so we don't want the frustration to grow.
Well, I think in the first instance, the standard interconnection requirements lay out the information requirements. At NYSEG, we do have an online interconnection portal. We have replicated those requirements. So, someone can go on the internet, they can plug through the application process and know all of the elements are there for them to complete. We're certainly always, open, if someone has a question, we'd rather them call us before submitting their application and get those questions out of the way so we can help them through that process. We always stand ready to talk to anybody who's interested. I know Chair Zippelman mentioned the ombudsperson process. I happen to be that individual for NYSEG. My door and my phone line is always open for, to help people through that process. So.
And National Grid?
So at National Grid, we're having ongoing meetings with the developers, and with most of them, they are weekly meetings. To improve, our transparency to the developers. The other thing that we've done is we've provided a single point of contact, to the developers, to help them manage the portfolio and any questions. And similar to Ray, we also have an ombudsman, who works with NYSERDA, and the PSC on resolutions of any issues that, that do arise.
So I'm going to just ask one more question on this and jump to the standby charges, but what do you think is a reasonable time? Obviously, 10 days, 2 days for residential small solar is fine. It seems, although there seems to be a big discrepancy between you. For larger projects, what is the time frame that you think is reasonable? I don't have a clue as to what that might be, but I'm just looking to think, what do you think?
Well, at least I think at this point, and I'll just, to acknowledge the difference here, the SIRs on the smaller projects, the standard interconnection requirements, provide us with 10 business days to turn those things around. And occasionally, we have to take longer than the 2-day average that we currently have. But, we've really worked to try and streamline our processes to turn those smaller projects around quicker. The new SIRs that has come out, we think those timelines are reasonable. They also, there's an expedited process. There's a set of screens for these larger projects, and if that project is able to get through those 2 different screening processes, they can skip over that longer 60-day business day review period that Mike Warden mentioned when he was up here. So there's avenues for these things to get expedited. But I think if you have to get into a detailed study of a 2-megawatt project, a 60 business day requirement is not too terribly bad. I don't think. I think that's a reasonable number to get through.
So that would mean from start to finish at 60 days, or that's just that period that you study it, and then so what's on either end?
Well, there's a preliminary screening process that is 15 business days, and then there's a supplemental screening process that is I think it's 20 business days for that. So you have
roughly 95 days you would expect to be hooked up.
You would be through the application process and move into the construction phase. For these larger projects, there is a substantial amount of utility construction that may be needed. There's transformers that have to be ordered. There's equipment that has to be brought in, and that process typically doesn't start until you're after the approval of the application phase.
So just talking about the approval, from start to finish, is 95 days is that what we would consider fair? Or do you think that we're going to see longer periods of time? And what do we see now compared to that 95 days?
Well, right now, we strive for, as I noted in my comments, for full compliance with those timeframes to turn those various studies around. So we're very focused on that. The only thing that tends to slow that down is if we end up getting into questions, with a developer where there's insufficient or incorrect information provided. But we, look to move through those steps as quickly as possible. I think a very positive aspect of the new standard interconnection requirement are timelines for the developer community to make decisions to move on to the next step. The old standard interconnection requirement didn't have those. Once they got a preliminary technical review after 15 business days, there was no requirement to make a decision to move on to the next step, that more detailed 60-day review. And once that was done, there was no requirement as far as moving into deciding, am I moving forward with this project or not? Those limitations are in there now, and I think it's beneficial for both sides of the industry here to get these projects moving forward.
And National Grid?
We also think the timelines are sufficient. Prior to I go back to the surge, but prior to the surge that we saw, we were meeting those timelines. And our goal right now, is to get the backlog cleared up, and then meet the timelines, the 60-day timeline and the 15-day timeline and the 20-day timeline. And they are achievable, and we have the same timelines in other jurisdictions that we meet. So you're thinking the 95 is reasonable because that's what you were meeting before? Yes.
I see. And Con Edison, I don't know whether you have many of these kinds of. You definitely have some because I know some school districts in my own area have done solar. So what is your?
So we're still doing a lot of interconnections, both for PV, for solar, and for CHP. It's just we currently did not see the very large spike in applications that we're seeing in other parts of the state. So it's at this point manageable. We are able to achieve the timelines associated with the SIR. Some of the more complex projects, both on the CHP side and for some of the larger photovoltaics, because there are some larger photovoltaics going in. Actually, a large project was commissioned yesterday on Staten Island at the Vissy paper plant. So there are a number of larger projects going in, but we didn't get overwhelmed with a large number of applications that far exceeded what has historically come in our service territory. So we have staffed up. We've added about 50% staff. I have a DG ombudsperson who's responsible for kind of working through some of these complex arrangements, because one of the things in New York City is you may be building a fairly straightforward facility, but you're going to shoehorn into a smaller space with the space requirements. So there's some complex engineering that has to go on some of these projects in New York.